We are with Hunter Cheney, and he's the Director of Marketing, Communications, and Education for the museum? Or
yes,
for the foundation?
For Collings Foundation and the American Heritage Museum. Yep.
Okay, good. So let's start with, what is the relationship between the museum and the foundation?
Sure.
How does it?
So the Collings Foundation was established in 1979. So we're a 501c3 educational nonprofit foundation. Our goal, kind of the purpose of the foundation, is, of course, the preservation and exhibition of very rare, major historical artifacts. So we're talking about automobiles and tanks and aircraft and all these big things. Okay. And also the organization of living history events and other types of history education programs. The goal, the purpose of the foundation is, of course, we want to motivate people to learn more about history education through interactive experiences. And so in the early 80s, we started out with historic aviation. And the hangar that we have here on the property, this is where we actually started the restoration on a very rare World War II bomber fighter aircraft called the B-24 Liberator. So this aircraft, most mass-produced aircraft in American history. Through the course of World War II, over 18,000 of these aircraft were made. And there were so few of them left in the country. Bob Collings, who founded the Collings Foundation, decided to bring this plane to the States and start restoration on this aircraft. Over the course of restoration, we changed that from a static restoration to a flying restoration. And at this point, when we're restoring the aircraft, we also add a B-17 Flying Fortress, which is a World War II heavy bomber, and a B-25 Mitchell. This is a mid-range bomber from World War II. And when we had all these planes completed, we thought, well, of course, as an educational foundation, as one of the most effective means to engage people in World War II history is in the interaction through these aircraft. So we started the National Wings of Freedom Tour. And as we're doing that, we continue to collect and restore historic aircraft to the point that we have one of the world's largest collections of historic aircraft. Some are here in the museum and on the grounds, and others are spread out around the country, depending on what we're doing with them.
Okay.
And so you'll see in that, as we're touring around the country, we always end up in California. And out in California lived this fellow, Jacques Littlefield. So Jacques, in his lifetime, had amassed the world's largest privately held collection of tanks and armored vehicles. Oh. So when the World War II aircraft would land in the city next to him, in Portola Valley area, we'd invite him down and say, "Oh, Jacques, come on, show off a tank with our aircraft." So we would have representation of the ground war and the air war of World War II. Unfortunately, Jacques passed away from pancreatic cancer in 2009.
Oh.
So in 2013, his family and foundation had selected the Collings Foundation to receive the entire collection of tanks.
Oh my goodness.
It was about 240 tanks and armored vehicles.
Oh my goodness.
An absolutely jaw-dropping variety that he had. So as an educational foundation, right, what do you do with a bunch of tanks? And this is how we got to the American Heritage Museum. Oh. So in 2019, we opened up the American Heritage Museum. So it's still relatively new. Yeah. And this museum is so much more than just tanks and armor. What we're doing is we're highlighting the chronological advancement of American and world history from the Revolutionary War through the Civil War into World War I. World War II is a large part of the museum, and it goes all the way through Korea, Vietnam, Cold War, Gulf Wars, all the way up to current time. It's an extraordinary museum. It's the only museum like this in North America. And that's due mostly through the rarity of some of the things in the collection and the way that everything is presented here. And so it's a really unique opportunity to see these relics in a setting that really brings us all closer to a sense of appreciation of what that particular time must have been like. What we strive to do through this museum, well, there's a saying that we often use here, is that if you read something about World War II history, you might remember it, but to experience something from it, you tend not to forget. Mm-hmm. And so we take that and we use that throughout the museum. So we really strive to engage people, not only as a means to better understand it, but we want to excite people to want to learn more about history. Because of course you know that the famous saying that we often use here is that for those who don't know history or have forgotten history are condemned to repeat it. And what we really strive to do is help people better understand history so we can make wiser decisions that affect our future. Everything in the museum is original. So what people see as they go through the museum is an exact representation of how it looked at that particular time in history. We continue to add to the museum our major artifacts, like for instance, earlier this year, we just put in an original German rail car that was used throughout Europe over the course of World War II. This really helps us talk about the mechanisms of the Holocaust and the circumstances surrounding, of course, the rise of fascism in Europe, and things that transpired after the Wannsee Conference in Germany. But we have a whole bunch of other exhibits that are similar to that really give us a very strong reminder of these things that had transpired.
How big is the museum?
So it's 86,000 square feet.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's incredible.
So it's a good-sized museum, there's over maybe 400 to 500 artifacts, major artifacts in the museum.
What are the hours that the museum is open?
So the museum's open Wednesdays through Sundays, 10 to 5 o'clock.
Okay.
Yep, and the admission fees range from $23 and down.
Okay.
Yep.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's a great history of the foundation and the museum itself. Are we going to look around?
Yeah, we're going to explore. We'll go through all the museums. I'm really looking forward to that.
I love it. Let's go.
Great. This is a truly immersive experience. This is, we took pictures from the original trench landscape, and so people go into the trenches. You're actually experiencing from a vantage point that you normally don't see. And then after we go through World War I and that trench experience, we go into another exhibit that I find particularly important. This is an exhibit called War Clouds. So here we highlight basically the world order in the 1930s. So World War I's just coming to a close, the Treaty of Versailles has been active, and then you have the rise of fascism in Europe and imperialism from Japan, and then of course the invasion of Czechoslovakia and Poland by Hitler, and then China or Japan going through China into the Pacific. So you start to see the murmurings of what will be World War II. And then it actually culminates into Japan attacking the United States at Pearl Harbor. Once that happens, then we go out of that exhibit into World War II in Europe. So the whole right side of the museum features World War II in Europe, where we're highlighting all the major Allied campaigns throughout Europe, starting in North Africa, actually, and working through Italy, the Normandy landings, Battle of the Bulge, crossing of the Rhine River, the liberation of Europe and the Holocaust, are all one side of the museum.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it takes up a large portion of the museum. And then from that point, we go into the Pacific War and onward from there. What's neat is about a quarter of the collection that's in the museum is operational.
Ooh.
So we actually keep these things running. Are you ready? Yeah, let's head in.
Hello, I'm Rob Collins, Executive Director of the Collins Foundation's American Heritage Museum.
Oh.
I'm proud to welcome you.
Main characters that came out of World War I that had a direct effect on World War II.
The role of technology and the human factor in war for many who fought it, including Americans, Pat, once again, beyond the horizon.
You know, one thing regarding World War I that I find astonishing and kind of mirrors human character in general. World War I was the worst conflict, termed the worst conflict in human history. It was the war to end all wars. It was unfathomable that another war like that would happen again. But it didn't take a mere 25 years from the end of World War I to what we see as the beginning of World War II. And that's the exhibit we're going into next. Yeah, it's a timed.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So like these two vehicles, the Vickers and the Panzer I, so this is a British light tank and this is a German light tank, and both of these are the only ones in North America.
Wow.
And there's a bunch of other of the political rhetoric that we have today.
I was afraid you were going to say that.
The same verbiage, everything is the same. The only thing preventing its execution is that we are a democracy. And we pulled like the 222. So we talk a little bit about the artifact and then we light it up so people can connect the two. It's an interesting way.
Red missile, okay.
So you remember the argument of going to war in Iraq was based on the fact that they had all these weapons of mass destruction. And this is the weapon of mass destruction. That's also the only one in North America. We'll head down onto the floor since we're kind of limited Think of this as like a floor that's been frozen in mid-production.
Okay.
Engines coming out of the engine department, getting ready to go into the Sherman tank.
Uh-huh. Oh, this is what we saw from above, huh?
Yeah.
Like it's that big.
Yeah. And that's the M60A1 Patton. That's called a Patton tank. Very important. This tank is a M1A1 Abrams tank. This is one of two that's on public. Do you remember the Hanoi Hilton? The famous prison in the Vietnam War?
Yeah.
We have the last two cells that originally held Americans.
Oh, wow.
And we've recreated them in this exhibit with the help of the POWs that were in it. And so very poignant.
So this you said is one of the cells of the...
Right, so the cells were back here. I'll show you. You can watch in here if you'd like. It's getting their knowledge of what they had.
Yeah.
This is a World War II fighter aircraft called a Hellcat. Very important fighter in the Pacific War, as is this one. This is a Wildcat. Same type of aircraft as the Hellcat, but the real special plane that we have here is this one. This aircraft is the last flying fighter that survived the attack on Pearl Harbor.
Wow. The one, this very one.
This very one, yeah.
Wow.
And it's still a flying
Amazing.
aircraft. We still keep it
Really?
flying, yeah.
Now, what are these sticking out here that are chained here? Is this...
Yeah, this is just to keep the wings in their retracted position. These are carrier.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, you could spend a day, heck of 3 hours.
Yeah, definitely.
The LVTA-4, very important piece of machinery for the Marines in the Pacific Theater.
Cowboy.
Yeah. And then this is it's called a horo. This is the last one of its type that remains in the world, but captured in the Philippines.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Now we're in the Pacific War. And then this is our most recent edition. So this is in the frameworks now, in the Massachusetts educational frameworks. So this film, when the Germans fire on the Russians, terrible terror weapon of World War II.
Oh, yeah.
So it's also known as the buzz bomb. It's all hands on deck here all the time. So.
Right, especially today, right? So today is what?
We have a World War II reenactment based on the European theater. So the premise is the Germans have captured the airfield. So they have their camps set up on the airfield. All the equipment, everything you see is straight out of 1944.
Oh, wow.
And so, of course, it's up to the Allied forces to come take over the airfield to further their advancement through France. And so it's a terrific living history event where we highlight, of course, the major battles in the European theater, primarily around Battle of the Bulge. That's the setting is around there, and it's wonderful way to engage people in World War II history. As you're going through the camps, the docents, the reenactors, they act as docents, so they tell the life of a soldier, and they're really chock full of all this historical information. So when you go, you're really learning about World War II history intimately through conversation. And of course, the battles themselves are quite dynamically choreographed.
Okay.
So we have a German reconnaissance aircraft that actually starts off the battle called a Fiesler Storch. It's a very rare German plane. People might remember this plane because it was the same type of aircraft that was used to temporarily rescue Mussolini from the hills of his captivity in Italy. And also a German test pilot, Hanna Reich, used the same type of aircraft to land in Berlin to try and convince Hitler to escape as the Russians were coming. Unusual historical provenance to this aircraft, and that actually kicks off the reenactment, and then the battle ensues. And we have about a dozen tanks and, of course, armored vehicles and all kinds of equipment participating in this battle. And so we do it twice today. And the weather actually today is perfect for this sort of thing. Little cold, a little rain, puts a real sport into the whole reenactment.
Emily Foker.